Hey, Mark Sept with HurricaneTrack.com here. It's about 11:30 Eastern Time, and I'm going to go over the advisory and take a look at a couple things that are kind of making me scratch my head a little bit about the advisory, and then go to sleep because, wow, I am tired. I'm sure you're tired of tracking this as well, especially considering that you all are the ones that have to prepare for it in a much bigger way than I do, just trying to figure out where to set up equipment, etc. That's challenging enough. You folks are the ones that get impacted, and this has been an ordeal to track over the last several days. So let's make me disappear for a little bit and take a look at the satellite animation here. Boy, the Grand Bahama, wow, just Freeport, Nassau, unbelievable. No words. This is just terrible. It's still stuck down there, just rotating around. Not much in the atmosphere to move this right now. There's a high pressure area sitting out here, another one way over the mid part of the country, and there's this trough in between that's kind of fractured the ridge and not allowing this to move north. There's really nothing acting on it, so it's stuck. It's just sitting there. You can see what looks like a little bit of a restriction of the outflow on the northwest side. It's starting to get a less healthy appearance. It's more ragged, kind of like we all feel. So Dorian looks like how most of us feel along the coast here of Florida, especially, that have been dealing with this, and up into the Carolinas, you know, the evacuations. It's a real headache. These challenges come along once in a while. You know, you don't want a hurricane to barrel into your area, but if they say that there could be one, you know, it's tough because, again, you don't want them to be right, but you want the forecast to be reliable. And overall, the National Hurricane Center forecast has been reliable. It's those day 4 and 5 points that have been a little tricky. And sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they're not. So many people can follow the guidance now, the models, and since those go out past 5 days and there are so many variations, I think it gets a little tiring for people, but it is out there. It's the genie that's out of the bottle. Not much we can do about that. So looking real quick at the overall big picture, again, a very busy Atlantic here, and it's just going to get busier. I'm going to show you something at the end to kind of explain that briefly. Real quick, in the Pacific, we have Hurricane Juliet, and just to ease your, I don't think anybody was fearful of it, but to ease, if anybody's wondering, there's really no threat to the Baja here. It's going to move off to the west-northwest and northwest with time, so no problems there. All right, let's go back and check the track map here and etc. with, not Juliet. Come on, I'm trying. There we go. Here's Dorian. Extremely powerful. They're going to run out of adjectives here. So still 130 miles per hour. That's definitely formidable. Look at the bearing and whatnot. Well, it's stationary, so there is no bearing. All right. Pressure 946. Not much else has changed. You have these different watches and warnings that are in effect. If we look down at the hazards affecting land, none of that's changed to any great extent. So there you go. We're still sitting at status quo in terms of what they're thinking about Dorian for the most part. Now, the track map for it has changed, as you would expect. It's going to change every 6 hours, usually. And you see that it comes up here. In fact, let me go back. This is the 5-day, and we don't want to ignore our friends up here in Atlantic Canada. And so as a transitioning extratropical cyclone in the atmosphere, this could bring some rather substantial impacts to portions of Nova Scotia. We will not ignore you folks up there. Don't worry. So let's look at just the 3-day track here. It's pretty cool that you can do this. And this is where the forecast accuracy is better overall. And so for the east coast of Florida here, this forecast track of the center plus the overall impacts around that center, and again, it's this area right through here, the tropical storm force winds, which are now trying to impinge on the coast of southeast Florida. You know, that could all get a little closer. The winds are going to pick up. There will be some squalls. there will be some power outages, but overall, the prospects of major impacts to the east coast of Florida here are diminishing. That's not the same as they are gone. I mean, we were coming back from setting up a weather station that we have some real problems with the anemometer that we're going to have to fix. It's a brand new ultrasonic anemometer, and it's showing very high wind readings, which are not accurate. So I'm glad we're testing it now. The barometer seems to be working fine, but not the wind speeds. So anyway, we came back from sticking that out on the South Causeway Bridge there to New Smyrna Beach, and a big squall came in. It actually wasn't very big, but it had a bite to it. So there's energy out there, definitely, but the overall impacts to Florida here looking like they're going to be less, which is good. And I don't see much that's going to change that. Again, you've got this high pressure sitting out here, another high pressure area sitting over here. There's this trough digging in up here that has eroded this ridge especially. And so the influence is not there. If it extended, I've talked about this earlier, more to the west, this would have come on through. And if it was really strong and everything was linked up, if we had high pressure, linked all the way across like this, roughly, this would be headed into the Gulf of Mexico. And a few days ago, it looked like that might happen. But as they say, things change. Now, let's just go read the discussion real quick, just a couple of things in it I'll point out. First of all, the forecaster here, I've never met Mr. Cangialosi, one of the few forecasters that I don't know personally. First paragraph talking about the present, and then the next long paragraph talking about, again, more about the present plus the future. You have very weak flow that results in a very slow and erratic northwest drift through early Tuesday. Then the ridge to the east and the trough to the north will amplify, and those acting together will start to move Dorian more north, but not much more west at this point, is what it looks like. The NHC forecast track remains consistent and continues to show that the core of Dorian offshore, but dangerously close to the east coast of the U.S. from Florida to North Carolina during the next 3 days or so. Users are reminded that the hurricane is not a point, and I talk about this a lot. The intensity models are in agreement that Dorian should slowly lose strength during the next several days due to wind shear picking up and drier air maybe. Regardless, in the details of that intensity forecast, it's expected to stay a powerful hurricane, and it's going to get larger in the atmosphere, and you can see that here. It has expanded in size greatly from where it was. So all this energy is radiating out from that center there. And yeah, if you take this core and move it closer to Florida like that, it could be a big problem. But the guidance really isn't suggesting that overall. And we can see that here. This is a look at some of the modeling, and we can zoom in on it. I do want to explain this a little bit, what these tracks are. Some of these are just statistical models. Don't even worry about that. Forget it. It's a no-skill model. So the blue one, don't worry about it. Now, this black one in here, right there, that I'm highlighting in yellow, I believe if we go look at the legend, so that must be the H-Wharf, is what that looks like right there, the H-Wharf. The OFCL is in there somewhere. It's hard to see. It's buried. But I think the OFCL, which is the official interpolated, or the consensus, whatever, their official track, based on the consensus, etc., offshore. Now, there are some of the model members, certainly, that are onshore, and we have to acknowledge that, and they are onshore around the 72-hour mark and beyond, right over the Outer Banks. But this, I think, I just have this feeling at this point that we're going to see the overall envelope change even more, and that it should pass enough offshore to keep the worst of the conditions away. It can still change, but I think that it's starting to look that way. And the analogy that I use, I try to do sports analogies when I can. I'm a big college basketball fan. Sometimes you realize your team is just not going to come back and win the game. And even though this is not a game, it's very serious. In this case, there is not enough ridging out here to expand west to force Dorian on a track like that. It's just not seeming to be likely. So that's great news for people in what would normally be harm's way, right? But Atlantic Canada, starting to see some possibilities down the road of threats up there. And barring some major surprise in the modeling, in the guidance, I should use that word more, guidance, instead of modeling, because it is just guidance. This is what we think is going to happen overall. The general community of, I'm a geographer, so I'm not technically a meteorologist, but I'm an earth scientist, so the consensus among scientists, including meteorologists, oceanographers, and geographers, those of us that follow all of this, it doesn't look like a major impact event for the United States. And I realize I could have just said all that in under 2 minutes, but I wanted to explain it just a little further. So real quick, let me show you over here on my Twitter. I'm going to go in and go to my messages. I chat with Ben Knoll often, and I asked him, what's going on with the upward motion, and he sent me a link here to this graphic, and this is remarkable. Shows you the future. So real quick, there's your map at the bottom here. You see this stretched out. This is a nice strip of the tropics here, the Mercator projection map. This is where we are now, and so this is the present, P for present, and this is the future going down. Okay, so time goes this way, forward in time. You see, there is the 6th of September, the 6th of October, and everything in between, finally middle October. Then these colors in here represent, this green is favorability for rising motion in the atmosphere. This brownish color in here is sinking motion, generally speaking. And we see where this happens, that this area right here, through time, starting around the middle of the month, is supposed to move into, generally, this region of the Western Hemisphere. Does that make sense? I hope it does. That you advance this forward, and then these areas here would all be in this greenish color, leaving the orangish, reddish, whatever, behind, with sinking taking place over a vast part of the Pacific. So the Pacific should not have much rising motion. And in fact, it's too bad I can't show you this rendered in 3 dimensions like a globe. Africa, also, lots and lots of rising motion coming up, and that will equal tropical waves coming off Africa, seeding the Atlantic with more. I said that several days ago, if you remember. Remember I talked about that? If you do, that's great. If you don't, that's okay too. I mentioned that those tropical waves, we had upward motion over Africa. It wasn't so much over the Atlantic at the time. We still snuck Dorian out of it. And I said, but the ones over Africa will seed the Atlantic later. There you go. Well, tried it. There you go. The Atlantic was seeded. And this is because we're able to see this coming. And this is from the European ensemble mean, 200 millibar velocity potential. Essentially, the green means go. And it is going to be go time even more for the Atlantic basin after we get through this little spurt of downtime, so to speak, with little pockets of favorability. As Ben said, it looks like about as favorable as a setup as you would ever see. Not ever see, I'm paraphrasing there. So, this is just the start, is the way I look at it. All right? Real quick on our plans, I'm going to go to sleep. I need the sleep. It's good for my health. Obviously, you guys do too. You need your sleep. So I'm going to wake up when I wake up tomorrow. And we'll see what happens. And barring any major changes of a shift towards Florida, we're going to pull up our assets here and begin making our way back north and see how things evolve. We're not in a hurry to get home. I'm not one of these people that when I track these things, I'm like, oh, if it's not a big hurricane, I'm not interested. I definitely don't play that game because as an earth scientist, as somebody who's passionate about this, I like to study every angle of it. All of these weird things that happen with tracks that we've seen, intensities that we've seen, the historic nature to what this did to the Bahamas, etc., and the overall bigger picture. I'm not just going to run home like, oh, well, that's not interesting enough for me. It doesn't work that way. We want to find out, for example, why our anemometer's not working like it should. It had a gust to 124 miles per hour. I'm like, nope, that's not right. So we'll slowly make our way back home over the next couple of days to North Carolina and see what happens up there. There could still be some substantial impacts. There is enough time, not very likely, but there is enough time that those tracks could shift back towards the North Carolina coast, South Carolina too. But generally speaking, things are looking more favorable for a close shave, and that's about it. A real close call here for a historic disaster for the United States looks to be avoided and getting better every model cycle, every guidance cycle, and every Hurricane Center update. All right. Thank you all for tuning in over these last few days, all season long, for the last 25 years. Well, 20 years that I've had the website. Welcome to all of our new patrons on Patreon. Stick around. Hurricane season's not over, and neither is this field operation. I'm just showing you it's kind of like, well, people start heading for the exits when the team they're rooting for is losing. We don't want to see that. I want you to stick around and, learn more and stay in touch. There's still a lot of season left to go. Tomorrow we will continue to stream live on YouTube, and I'll keep posting up. And nothing's changed about all that. It's just the seriousness of this seems to be taken down a level, which is good. Good for the people. We were ready and will still be ready if something crazy happens as I get a good night's sleep tonight. All right, thanks for tuning in. I do appreciate it from whatever device you're doing so from. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.